So this episode of Gonzo Media, it's going to be a little different. This is a live recording of me doing a panel at Youmacon 2019, and it is about Godzilla What Could Have Been. And it is a little adventure where I and some friends of mine go and look through years of unfinished, unreleased Godzilla movies, and I talk about some of my favorites. It was a good time, I got a lot of laughs, it was a lot of fun, it was a huge learning experience for me. So don't expect a lot of editing like you usually might see in my content. And what's fun is I actually decided to do a bit of commentary where I'll go back, add some thoughts how things went, correct myself on some of the mishaps and wrong things I've said, all that type of fun things. I would also like to give a huge shout out to Eli Haswell for redesigning my main character. Eli Haswell is the creator of the webcomic Hello World, It's Eli, which is a combination autobio/humor comic series narrating his experiences as a perpetually awkward transgender person trying to bumble his way through life. It's a very cute comic that I think would really connect with a lot of people, and I highly recommend all of you giving it a shot. With all that out of the way, it's time to get off that couch, crack those fingers, and journey with me to Youmacon 2019 for the Godzilla What Could Have Been panel. I'd just like to announce myself. My name is Brandon. I currently run a small YouTube channel called Gonzo Media Presents. You can see my cute little logo at the top right of the screen. With me on the panel is Coop, who has some knowledge of Godzilla. And then we have Aaron and Allie, who have no understanding of Godzilla. What? They haven't seen a single Godzilla film. They're really the worst possible people to have up with me. When I envisioned this panel, it was just supposed to be me. However, my friends, seeing how nervous I was, decided and offered to sit up there with me for moral support. I really appreciate them for doing this, especially for all the silly things that make them do that you'll see later on in the video. But they're here anyway, so give them a hand of applause. Now excluding them, I just have to ask, how many of you people know Godzilla?
Yeah!
Yeah!
Godzilla!
Now, how many people have you seen Godzilla vs. Astro Monster?
Yeah, I heard about that.
Good amount of hands. How many of you seen Godzilla vs. Batman? What? If you're raising your hand, you are a huge liar. That movie never got made. But that's what we're here to talk about today. It's movies like that and some other fun things that I've found out about that I thought would be interesting to talk to you guys. The first one is Densetsu no Kyojo Okami Otako Tai Gojira. Sorry if I butchered that, I don't speak Japanese.
You were about to get to it.
Otherwise known as Wolfman, the legendary colossal beast vs. Godzilla. It was directed and produced by Shizuo Nakajima and several other former Toho filmmakers in 1983. This movie is really interesting in that it was actually completely finished, but it was never released. Toho is pretty anal about a lot of their properties, which is why they're very stringent on it being represented in anything that's not themselves. Like there's been a lot of lawsuits about even things representing Godzilla, even adjacent. And it's a simple premise, like a lot of the Godzilla movies at the time. A werewolf enters Japan, gets hit by radiation, was never clear how, becomes a giant kaiju monster. And then they fight, they wrestle, suplex fights.
They kiss.
Yeah. A little homoerotic for Godzilla, I know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a lady werewolf.
Yeah. What gender Godzilla is?
This was back in the time.
Laid eggs before.
This was back in the time when Godzilla was still kind of an enemy. He wasn't the child-friendly savior of the children that we kind of got nowadays. That kind of got changed with the recent American films. So it was pretty much in this one. It was back. He's evil, but he was kind of considered the lesser of two evils, in that he's fighting against the evil monster that man has created in the modern area. The costumes were made by Fuyuki Shinada. He's actually the guy who did, for one of the more recent films, JMP, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. By recent, for some reason I meant a film that was released and made 18 whole years ago. Which is why a lot of the suits actually look pretty good, because it actually had someone that knew what he was doing when he made it.
Yeah.
And there's actually many drafts of this movie existed. I remember looking, there was about 10 or so that exist. One featured Baragon, who's this little weird gargoyle dog-looking creature. He kind of sucks in every movie he's in. He always dies, usually first. So I'm not surprised at all he wasn't actually used.
And that's the guy in the bottom right?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Well, now we know the Yamcha of Godzilla.
Exactly. And again, it was a full feature film. It was inspired, all the suits, mostly the Godzilla one, was the King Kong vs. Godzilla movie. And sadly, all other drafts of this film are lost.
Yeah.
Like, some of the stills from them have survived, and apparently there's 10 hours of raw footage exists that's not really out there. You can see some screens. It's been a thing for years now that the original creators have it, and they want to make a DVD where you can actually watch the movie, but it hasn't came out yet. There's rumors that it'll come out in 2020. I wouldn't put your eggs in that basket.
You know, if they just release all 10 hours, the Bridgers get at it.
There's actually a Kickstarter that was called, like, Kaiju Gaiden, that its biggest claim to fame to get you to back it was that you'll get this movie in it. And I was one of the people that put like $100 in this Kickstarter. The guy that was a part of it took all the money and like fled to another country, so we're never gonna get it.
Man, that's better than my Mighty Number 9 story. So
Sorry for another day. Apparently, one of the original directors, Mark Jaramillo, is still a part of the project and does aim to finish it someday. There are currently no dates set for it, but it's something to keep your eyes out on. And here's actually some footage.
He's a chunky boy.
Big boy.
Wow.
Throwing dirt.
Yeah. The famous,
Truly the coward's way out.
the famous anti-Godzilla tactic. Sure.
It's the ancient samurai technique of throwing dirt in the eye. Whoever said pocket sand is correct.
Bad for the Godzilla.
Man, if only he had some sort of breath-based projectile weapon he could use against these rocks.
It's completely unheard of.
I don't think he's going
There it is!
Hey!
Oh no!
It's with the dentine ice.
Knocked his contacts
I've been there, it's not very fun.
The roof guy has a good muscular definition.
It's well defined.
Yeah.
He goes to the gym 5 times a week.
Doesn't skip like that.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, now.
turn-based fighting going on.
So is this the only surviving current footage of it? Or that they released publicly?
There's some other footage, but this is obviously like a straight clip. There's like some bits, like 30-second pieces that are around.
Gotcha. Would you say this is like the only quote unquote edited footage that exists for the time being?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that I'm aware of.
Gotcha. So the rest of this is raw.
It's a raw, uncut.
Gotcha.
Probably can still see the wires of everything.
What a
What happens next?
What a twist.
Well, I'm glad that you like that clip because we're not getting any more clips from the rest of the movies I'm talking about today. I still got some other fun footage for you guys, so don't worry.
Oh, I remember this.
The next one I'm going to talk about is Gojira Tai Ghidorah Su, which is basically was the original sequel to Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, which is one of my personal favorite of the films.
Yeah.
It was intended release of 1975. The plot of this one was basically that Ghidorah, he's basically a giant sludge monster. Basically think Muck from Pokemon, and that's him as a giant monster that kills everything. And he was born from the chaotic and turbulent conditions in Africa, because back in the 70s, that was like a really huge deal that was really popular in Japan. And he emerges again from the chaos that white people brought into a foreign country, as they're known to do. And the original director, Ghidorah, he originally always intended for a sequel when he made it. But originally, instead of bringing Ghidorah back, he wanted a mutant sea star called Hitoda that was named from the fans. We actually never got an original name for him when the original draft of the film was made. Not real footage, a fan mock-up, but obviously a giant eye in a brittle star. It's not the scariest thing, kind of silly looking. Fits Godzilla a lot though.
It looks like a big old Starmie.
It does look like a big old star.
Biggest
And he pretty much realized what we said. The idea is pretty stupid. So let's bring back Ghidorah. People like Ghidorah. He was fun. He's in a lot of the new games, so that's good. And again, Africa was chosen because a lot of the headlines of deforestation and droughts that were happening quite frequently back in the day. And Bono was quoted when they asked him why Africa, and if Aaron here would like to read the lines.
Sure. If those chaotic, dynamic countries developed a little further, it wouldn't be implausible for Ghidorah to show up there.
Great narration, let's give him applause. Unfortunately, film was canceled before production, which is why there's no footage available whatsoever, not even a rough cut. And the reason for that is the producer, Tomoyaki Tanaka, hated the idea. He produced the original Ghidorah film, but he was actually sick during the entire production and filming of that. And so he didn't see it till afterwards, and he completely just hated the idea. He hated the film, thought it was garbage. The only reason he got to produce was like, I'll produce Ghidorah 2, is the original director Bono made another film in 1974 that I forgot the name. I think it was about samurais, was pretty well received, and he really liked that movie. So I decided to give Bono a second chance. The film I was talking about right here was actually not a samurai film, but instead a 1974 disaster film called Prophecies of Nostradamus. Another fun fact about Bono is he was an executive producer for the legendary Godzilla films Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla King of the Monsters. Bono unfortunately died of subarachnoid hemorrhage in 2017. The man will surely be missed. And here's just my favorite clip of Ghidorah, just so you know the kind of theme and mood that was around at the time. It's me after Taco Bell.
Still not as stupid as Jet Jaguar.
Before you move on to this, this is what we're talking about, Ghidorah. 3D max on this list?
What?
3D to the max?
I did not put that on the list.
So, just look, hey, I know a thing or two. For a while, we're talking about, because it goes right into, before we hop onto the Saperstein here, Bono tried for years to get Hedorah 2 off the ground. There was another project that was going to be done in IMAX called Godzilla 3D to the max. And the whole idea was that Godzilla would be fighting Hedorah all the way through Las Vegas as he's taking smog and all over the place. This is before, after the Final Wars and before that American Godzilla got it going. And I think it was canceled around 2005, if I remember correctly. So that was something that could have been near IMAX.
Godzilla 3D to the Max was canceled sometime before the year 2008, and it was canceled in favor of the 2014 American film Godzilla. And instead of it actually featuring Hedorah, it was actually intended to feature a monster extremely similar to Hedorah called Deathla. Yeah, and kind of to piggyback off what he said, there's a bunch of these canceled films. I couldn't put it in a panel, like an hour, 2 hour one would still probably be not enough. There's like 30 films that are canceled that we know of at the very least. And there's a lot of cool ones. One that I remember that I almost put in it, but I couldn't find enough good information to really warrant doing much out of, was it's basically they make a giant robotic girl in order for Godzilla to fall in love with it so they can learn back to the scene. That was back in the time when Japan, Godzilla was the hottest thing, and they didn't really know what to do with the character at all, since he became from like the chaotic nature of like World War II and the chaos of the war in nuclear bombing and testing, to basically being, we need to make it more friendly for children to sell toys, because that's what everyone in the 70s cared about doing, was making a toy company and sell cheap toys for a lot of money.
Now, if we had Miku Hatsune back then.
I would love my Miku Hatsune in Godzilla crossover. So, you were going to talk about, it's a lot of films, but we're mostly going to talk about two of them because they're the ones that we actually have interesting information on it. And it's two films were helmed by Saperstein, and he's a pretty interesting individual. He's one of the guys that actually made Godzilla popular and make money here in the West. He bought his own film company called UPA, and they published a lot of things. And the UPA, it's not really known of now, but they're the companies that made like Mr. Magoo and a lot of classic animations from like Super Rubber Band era from like the 40s. They actually made those, and he grew up living with parents who owned like a Chicago film like theater and all that. So he grew up watching these cartoons during intermission of films. So I kind of grew up with that. And they would get importations of like the original Godzilla movie, like from 1954. So that kind of inspired him when he had money to buy the studio of the classic cartoons that he liked, and then tried to get actually a really close relationship with Toho, which he actually did accomplish, and I actually give him a lot of credit. And he proposed a series of films in the late 70s, early 80s, and at least two of them are known. We understand that more of them were like talked about in the works behind the scenes, but sadly, about a lot of things behind the scenes, we don't really get to know about them until later on, or if ever. And there was a live action one in 1978, which was going to be an American produced film, which would have been the first, and an animated one in 1988. And again, live action collaboration between US and Japan. And it had a budget of $6 million was proposed. And yeah, a lot for the time. I feel like a lot of people forget when we're like seeing movies like the Marvel films that have like $100 million budgets. Like back in the day, $6 million, that's a ton of money. A lot of films, like a lot of Godzilla movies, were sometimes made of budgets of only like $500,000 and reused a lot of old suits, which is why sometimes the suits just don't look as good, because they're actually the suit that was actually damaged with pyrotechnics of the previous film to save money. So that, which kind of aids to some of the cheap feel of the old movies. And this would have featured Godzilla fighting Gargantua, which is one of these cool dudes. One of Godzilla's more underrated enemies, They were basically first featured in, I forget the year it was made, but War of the Gargantuans. 66, thank you. And it's basically, I forget the names. There's a male and a female one, and they actually fight Baragon, which was a cool monster, or not so cool monster that we talked about a couple slides ago. I actually got the wrong film here. I was actually thinking of the very specifically named Frankenstein vs. Baragon movie, where Baragon fights the actual Frankenstein's monster from the Mary Shelley's classic horror novel. And then sliding over to the animated project, it was, one of the reasons was it was stated that live action film we wanted to do 10 years ago, too expensive, $6 million, way too much, we can't afford that, Godzilla's not that popular. So it's like $25 million was actually the budget that was like, to make it would probably be that much. And they're like, how about instead of doing a live action Godzilla movie, I make a pre and post animation film where the production is done in the US, when we're gonna get like a really like cheap Japanese animation studio to do all of the hard work for us. Yes.
Yep.
Cost effective. And, well, obviously none of these films got created, sadly. Saperstein did assist with the 1978 Godzilla cartoon, which was produced by Hanna-Barbera. I'm assuming everyone here knows who Hanna-Barbera is. If not, you had a terrible childhood. I'm not gonna lie.
Or you're really young.
Or real young, I guess.
Yeah, but too.
Hey.
I had to show it because I love the clip so much. It's the intro to the old Godzilla cartoon.
Yeah.
As soon as there you go. Sorry about that.
Up from the depths, 30 stories high, free fire is man in the sky. Godzilla,
It's Godzilla. I did a little bit of research that before I actually did this. I think it's basically to make things cheaper, or at least allegedly by studios. A lot of the times they'll trace pre-existing cells from other shows, and so that's probably what happened with that.
Yeah, Hanna-Barbera is notorious for that.
Yeah. Again, Scooby-Doo with the same background and they run behind it. Again, lots of cheap shortcuts for animation. It's always been like that. It's always going to be like that.
Cough, cough, C-Lab.
That's the entire point of Sea Lab.
Yes.
They probably had plenty of dinosaur faces from Flintstones sitting around too.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, Godzuki in that show, he's basically, because every show had to have the cute little mascot to sell toys and to get the kids to watch it. That's why Scrappy-Doo exists. So Godzuki is the Scrappy-Doo of Godzilla.
Yeah. But worse, he is of no relevance whatsoever.
The cool thing that was going to be about the 1988 animated movie was because he grew up with it, Saperstein wanted to reassemble a lot of the old animation staff, obviously the ones still alive, because some of those cartoons are super old at that time, from all of the award-winning 50s cartoons that the studio had made, again, Mr. Magoo being one of the biggest ones that he's noted for being inspired by.
I guess because I had two more.
And a little fun fact, Biollante, a film that was made, was being worked on at the same time, which was probably one of the reasons why the animated didn't get made, is because Biollante was looking really good. In Toho, despite them being really pretentious, they're also really cheap and don't like to spend a lot of money. So them seeing why make these two movies and spend a lot of money when we can make this one that'll make more money, they just probably cut the project right then and there.
Do you know if there was any cross-pollination between the two projects at the time?
I doubt it, because
Okay, I was curious.
the animated one was being pretty much made and held by America.
Gotcha.
So it's
they're
like,
like
they probably didn't even talk to each other at all
Gotcha,
during
gotcha.
production of both films. And again, that was just my like thought and theory about why were canceled. It's never been released. Toho is really private. They don't ever tell you why these films have been canceled. But Saperstein did eventually lead to the negotiations that led to the Sony buying rights to the property, which is why we got the incredible 1998 film. I will say though, the two best things that came out of that movie was the cartoon inspired by it, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And
That was awesome.
this,
Matthew Broderick.
Matthew Broderick, yes. And,
That's a lot of fish.
and this little Taco Bell commercial.
Godzilla's hiding and it's up to you to find him. Just buy a medium or larger drink. If you find Godzilla, use your decoder to reveal what you've won. I think I need a bigger bowl.
This Taco Bell commercial is a big hit between me and my fiance. So when I put it in, I expected a huge reaction from the audience, and I really didn't get that. Well, different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Yeah.
And Vinny ate the dog, yes.
The only good thing to come out of Godzilla.
There's apparently actually like 4 of those commercials. There must have been some kind of deal between Sony and Taco Bell at the time. Obviously didn't save the movie.
Godzilla
Probably
here and
funded
Taco
it.
Bell.
And yeah,
One other good thing happened after that crappy movie. Toho bought the rights to it, rebranded him Zilla, and released a video of the actual Godzilla ripping him to shreds.
and you can actually see what he's talking about in Final War, which is all about kaiju. If you haven't seen the movie, I'll kind of not really spoil it, but talk a little bit about it. It's pretty fun. It's aliens attack planet Earth. That's actually really common in a lot of Godzilla movies. Aliens exist. We know about them. They're bad. We hate them. And they come to America, or not just America, the whole world. They're like, we're going to release all of these monsters to attack all of these countries all at the same time. Zilla was pretty much one of the first ones, and I think it was set to attack Australia.
He's in Sydney on the house.
And Godzilla comes, and it's the shortest fight in the movie. It's like Godzilla does one attack, Zilla just dies right away.
Yeah.
And that just shows Toho was really not happy about giving Sony the rights and seeing that movie, which is why they bought the rights, just so they could like kind of control the like media that comes from it, which is why they rebranded the monster and generally kill it off as soon as they can whenever they want to use it. And again, Batman vs. Godzilla is probably the most famous and interesting out of all these films.
You don't have Godzilla versus Bambi?
We actually got that game out though, so that was released.
Yeah, it's about a few minutes long.
And that, if you haven't seen it, that actually is a real thing. It's pretty much Bambi's frolicking through the forest for like, it's really, really short. And then eventually you just see Godzilla's foot just stomp and destroy Bambi. And then the film ends.
So it's regular Bambi.
Yes, it's a beautiful film and I highly recommend all of you check it out.
Tell me about this Batman Godzilla.
Yeah. Batman vs. Godzilla was commissioned by Shinichi Shikazawa, one of the big heads of Toho at the time. And this was around the same time of the Batman series launch in 1966. I'm talking old Adam West, super tight. Sometimes you just can't get rid of a bomb, Batman.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
We're on the wrong side of his pants.
Yes.
Shark repellent.
Sadly, no
Bat
Godzilla
shark
repellent in the movie. It was really a missed opportunity. And one of the reasons why they wanted to do this movie is Bat fever was really popular at the time. It was actually really popular in Japan to the point where a lot of companies were trying to buy the rights to Batman because Batman wasn't popular yet. He was kind of a known name for children and was really considered, he's a silly thing that children like. And so all these studios could kind of get the rights to the character. And there's actually like a long series of really, really bad and campy Japanese Batman comics that exist. And there's actually, I forget the name of the book, it's a compilation of a lot of the ones they could find all together in one album. I really want to check it out. It probably would be really entertaining if you like Batman, but are not afraid to kind of see him as a joke.
I want to say Dark Horse put that out, but I'm not 100% sure.
I wouldn't bet on that, but you can. And again, another funny thing about Batmania is it coincided with the bastardization of Godzilla from being destroyer of Japan to being the hero of children. Bilateral movement, it's really interesting how all that worked. And two ideas of this movie were actually exist and talked about. One by Shinichi Sakazawa, and another one by an unknown American author. After all these time, no one knows who did it. And what's funny enough is both of these films, again, kind of similar to the animation project in Biollante, they were both kind of worked on independently with really little to no communication between the teams. Because back in the day, studios and teams like that didn't communicate. Internet didn't exist, and those phone calls were super expensive to do, if even possible, in a lot of places. So the only way to really communicate is through snail mail or through sending a crew to journey to the other country that it's being produced in. So didn't happen ever, really, especially cheap studios. And we know about both versions, but only knowledge of the American version exists. And we know of it because of the William Dozier papers. You can actually read the William Dozier papers in the University of Wyoming's American Heritage Center. While I've not read these documents myself, I definitely would like to someday. And William Dozier, he's the guy that produced and directed the Batman '66 live action TV show. And his idea for that was, they basically asked him to do it, and he hated Batman. He never read Batman ever in his life, but his idea was, I'm going to take this campy children's thing and make it into a giant drama for everyone to enjoy. And he succeeded to some degree. I like the show, but it's okay if you don't. And basically, a lot of this is going to be about the plot. It's really interesting, but also really, really stupid. And basically, it starts off, Barbara and Commissioner Gordon go on a boat trip across the Far East. They're tired, Gotham sucks, killer clowns are trying to kill it every other weekend. Sometimes they gotta get away.
Yeah.
And eventually, the boat capsizes due to the evil German meteorologist Klaus Finster. And his story is, basically, he's been missing for 20 years, and it's believed that he disappeared due to like a weird storm incident when he was researching off the coast of Japan. So he's missing, assumed dead. And he has a secret Mount Fuji lair. And by secret, everyone knows about it, it exists. Godzilla even is aware. And Finster claims to have a weather machine and threatens to destroy Japan. It's kind of common. Again, it's a Batman movie more than a Godzilla movie at the time, so you have to have someone threatening to destroy the city and the country. What do you guys think Finster wanted? Does anyone want to take a guess?
$1 million, billion, zillion, jillion, quadrillion yen.
You're pretty close. The real answer was 20 million in gold bars. It's never proclaimed why, especially because the 20 million in gold bars was ridiculously heavy. No one would carry it. It would kill anything. But again, 60s gold has to be what you want. And for some reason, this is unrelated. When I read the name Klaus Finster, I thought of Chaz Finster. So every time I talk about him, picture him and it'll definitely be a lot more entertaining. Probably closer to the original idea than we probably would expect otherwise. And also a little tangent, sadly no Reptar movie was ever planned that I could find out about. Sad, isn't it?
We should fix that.
In Batman movie, Batman and Robin are called to save the day. And we're smart enough, and they decided we want to cast Adam West and Burt Ward, the original Batman and Robin, to reprise their roles. And the plot is they just had recently fought robotic Count Dreidel, who I'm assuming is this Jewish-themed ally that was probably made for this movie. I actually spent a lot of time looking into seeing if Count Dreidel exists in anything else. I could find no knowledge of it. And apparently he's this ally of theirs that never existed in anything else that just appears in the movie, and they're just like best friends. That turns out that he's a robot.
Made of clay, right?
It probably made of clay, yes. And surprise, Finster controls Godzilla, not the weather.
Dun dun dun.
I mean, weather Godzilla.
And what's, again, to save money, after finding out that it's Godzilla, which isn't really revealed, it's just Batman uses his bat senses and it's like, I think Godzilla is behind everything. And in order to do research and kind of plan what we should do about it, they watch actual footage from King Kong vs. Godzilla.
Oh, man. Which version?
Probably the American version.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. It was American developed for the most part. Obviously, Toho put their name on it, but it was American developed and all that.
Yeah.
And then we get a Kabuki show churned sword fight. And then is it revealed that Barbara, one of their reasons for going to the Far East is she has a friend that she meets up, and I believe it was implied a love interest with, her name was Rieko, or his name was Rieko. And then it turns out that that person was a robot in disguise. And the spy was Batman and Robin all along, controlled by Finster. And then after Kabuki sword fight, Finster is then chased. There's a Finster chase, which leads Batman and Robin running into a poisonous taxi cab.
This is hurting his brain.
The taxi cab, they're dangerous. Barbara then decides, after losing her robot best friend / love interest, dons the Batgirl outfit and then saves them by using a pocket blowtorch to cut the door off and saving Batman and Robin. Probably poisonous leak out there somewhere, but no one cares about that.
And then she made creme brulee, right?
Yes, you gotta use creme brulee. Batman's favorite next to lobster bisque. And after that, Finster is then chased into a bathhouse. And then while in the bathhouse, we finally get to see Godzilla, which is brought from Batman and Robin going into the Batcopter, which, if you're not familiar with the show, looks like this.
Yes.
Egg beats are.
And I didn't, in Mythbusters, they went on that in an episode. I think I remember seeing someone went in the Batcopter at some point that was famous.
I'm not 100% sure.
I could be wrong.
That sounds like a Mythbusters thing, though.
I just thought about it, like just looking at it again.
While I was wrong about Mythbusters piloting the Batcopter in an episode, it actually is possible to see the Batcopter as it tours around the US by its pilot Eugene Knock. Fun fact about the Batcopter is it was actually used, different skins of course, in other old TV shows such as The Green Hornet, Omega Man, and MASH.
In seeing that it's finally Godzilla and that Batman realizes his plan and thoughts are correct, his plan to stop Godzilla consists of luring Godzilla with a mating call.
What?
And all of my panel guests, give me your best Godzilla mating call.
This bit was all actually improv. None of my friends had any idea I was going to ask them to do this when they came up, so all of their actions are really genuine and unrehearsed, and I think it worked out better this way. They definitely deserve all of the applause they got, though.
Okay. You go first. Violent noises.
I vote for Ellie's.
Give him a round of applause for being a And after the mating call, the plan is explosives. They take thousands of pounds of explosives, hike up and climb all the way up to his neck, plant them, explode them, knock Godzilla unconscious. That is the plan. That is what they thought of. That's the 60s. And then Batman wants to know, because he's really interested, he's a very courteous, friendly man. Once he devises a plan, he surveys the entire population of Japan in order to come up with what should we do with Godzilla once he is basically paralyzed and stunned. And what do you think they thought of? Anyone have a guess?
Turn him into a tourist attraction. Robots.
Both of those are good ideas.
Food?
Not food. Food also is a good idea. Their idea is super practical. Send to space. Unanimous vote, send to space.
God.
And how they expected to do that, I will get into later.
Oh my god.
And then, at some point in the film, they continue the chase. It's never explained how it happens, but it happens. He chases to the edge. I believe it was Mount Fuji, and then he falls and he dies. And that's how Chaz Finster dies.
No, he has his parachute, so he's fine.
Parachutes shouldn't exist yet.
That's
Probably really anticlimactic.
And
then, once Finster's out of the way, Batman, Robin, and Batgirl come together and they plan how are we going to strap these explosives. And then they use all of the cool Bat vehicles that you've seen in the show, some probably made for this movie. No Godzilla repellent, sadly. And then they fight Godzilla, expect explosions, fire, toy helicopters flying around. Cuts to Adam West being Adam West.
Adam West.
And during the fight, it's found out that Godzilla grabs the vehicle that Batgirl is in, but Batman doesn't care at all about Batgirl, apparently, and then uses the lure while Batgirl is in his hands, which leads to Godzilla freaking out, and then she gets thrown all the way to the Daibatsu pit. If Godzilla ended up throwing Batgirl while in Tokyo, Batgirl would have been flown an equivalent to 59 kilometers, which is equal to about 36 miles here in America. It would probably kill her, yes. But apparently the sacrifice was well made. The explosion plan works. Godzilla is then stunned. And then in order to send him to outer space, Godzilla gets an entire rocket built around him by the Japanese government. And then he gets sent to outer space where he allegedly rotates in our atmosphere to this day.
Eventually he stops thinking.
And yeah, that's all I had for you guys today. Again, sorry I couldn't talk about a lot of the other films. Is there any questions or anything people would like to know about, or thoughts, concerns? Yeah?
Well, I wonder if that last one, oddly enough, inspired the eventual, I think it was direct-to-video though, Ninja Batman, which was kind of more anime.
I can see that. I can see that. Yeah?
As a young person, how many actual Godzilla films are made?
32? So I actually lied here. It's really only 33 Godzilla movies that exist if you don't include all 3 parts of the Netflix original movie. It's kind of a... Because Godzilla is used in a lot of things. In some, he's the main goal. Some, he's off to the side. And then you have an animated film that's split into parts. So you can consider them 3 individual films, or just one that's split into 3. So I could say the number anywhere from like 28 to 32, depending on how you want to categorize some of the films.
They've made about, because they put Godzilla on ice with Final Wars in about 2014. So they've made about, if you add in animated films, maybe about 6 Godzilla films in the last, right now, 5 years.
Yeah, because there's Final Wars, there's Godzilla, American film, and you have the sequel to that, you have Shin Godzilla, and then you have the Netflix animated films.
Ugh, gross. I hate those ones.
And then, it's not exactly Godzilla, but if you want to label in the King Kong Skull Island film, again, not Godzilla, but it's directly related.
That movie's dope.
It's dope, you should all watch it.
Wasn't there also like a sequel to Shin Godzilla planned that was also scrapped?
Yeah, it was. And what's sad about that is Anno really wanted to make a sequel to Shin Godzilla. And if you don't know who Anno, he's the Neon Evangelion Genesis. I hope I pronounced that right.
Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Thank you.
There you go.
And he had it planned. I feel like he had not quite the script figured out, what he wanted. But he hated working with Toho so much that he decided, I don't want to make this film anymore.
And now he's doing that Shin Ultraman.
Yeah, sounds right, yeah.
Yeah.
So to go along with that, so they didn't make a movie about it, but at Universal Park there, they do a lot of 4D experience things. There are clips of Shin Godzilla versus the Avas from Evangelion.
Oh, really?
Where three of them trying to team up against Shin Godzilla.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
It's, I know exactly what you're
And
talking
there's a whole
about.
bunch of Shin, or like Godzilla, Evangelion crossover videos.
Yeah, there's a ride at Universal Studios in Japan where you can watch that whole thing. They strap you in, and you're like, wow, the Avis got me! Oh! And they fight Godzilla, and they team up against the Angel, I believe.
What are we doing here? We should all be there.
Road trip?
Road trip to Japan.
I saw that.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
I was actually like reading online that there's like a lost project. It's called Godzilla versus Godzilla, and apparently it's it was like eventually made into like Godzilla versus the Destroyer, and like apparently it's supposed to be the ghost of the 1954 Godzilla fighting like the Heisei one. Which is actually kind of odd because like he goes into little Godzilla and like changes him to resemble the 1954 version. You know, what it actually made into a really good film actually.
I love it.
Yeah.
And what's sad about a lot of these unfinished Godzilla movies, or ones planned, canceled, is a lot of them, half of them probably deserve to be canceled.
Yeah.
Other ones were really cool ideas that Toho probably didn't have the budget or technical ability to actually get made.
And I bet you any production material, like we were talking about that 90, you said it was 10 hours of footage?
Yeah, 10 hours of raw footage.
For that one film, I bet you that's either in private collectors' hands and they're not going anywhere with it, or it's in the Toho vault.
It just sucks because we know it. Footage exists, it's confirmed to exist, and obviously I've shown some of it. It's just a matter of if we'll actually ever be able to get the footage ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you know about the purported Godzilla versus Frankenstein film?
I did know about that.
That actually apparently was the basis for what eventually became Godzilla versus King Kong, and the German production studios were very upset about it.
I couldn't imagine why. Yeah.
Do you think there's a chance that any of the canceled Godzilla movies could ever end up being made now that they, especially the ones that were limited by technology back then? Do you think there's any chances that they could be made now that we have the technology and special effects to do a lot more stuff?
Considering how Toho is as a company, and considering like a lot of these Japanese businesses, their very old-fashioned mindset, we'll probably never get it. And the chances of getting these filmed is based on they kind of going through a restructure completely and having younger people in trying to capitalize on the internet exists. Fans know and are aware of these films that were produced. Let's make them, and that's probably the only way that I can see, but we'll eventually get them.
Yeah, because like probably part of Anno getting into the Shin Godzilla gig was like, we like that Ava money, bring some of us over that. You know, that's always
that's definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. Yes, Jim.
So, who was responsible for the awful original dub of the 1954 Godzilla?
And there you have it. That was Gonzo Media Productions' Youmacon 2019 Godzilla panel, Godzilla What Could Have Been. Sorry about that ending there. We actually did have about 10 or so more minutes of footage of me and my panelists asking questions. Sadly, that data got corrupted and I couldn't save it. Outside of that unfortunateness of losing data, what did you guys think? Did this panel interest you? If this was at a convention or something being presented at a place near you, would you watch it? Are there any of these unreleased films that you think are particularly interesting that you would like to watch or wish existed? Let me know in the comments below. I did a lot of hard work on this. I hope it shows. I definitely will try to be doing more panels in the future. I'll probably be bringing this one to other conventions down the line. I might not do it again at Yoma just because I don't want to be that guy that does the same panel every year. Youmacon already has a pretty decent problem with that as it is. So after all and in the end, thank you all for watching and I hope you all have a wonderful day.